one nation survive invasions, revolutions, world wars, economic collapse, and political chaos, yet still become one of the most powerful countries on Earth. From frozen Siberian wilderness to nuclear superpower, from emperors and kings to communist revolutionaries. Russia's story is one of survival, expansion, and power. Today, Russia remains one of the most influential nations in the world. But its rise to superpower status took centuries of war, sacrifice, and transformation. This is the story of how Russia became a superpower. The beginning of Russia. Long before Russia became powerful, the region was divided into small kingdoms and territories. These lands were frequently attacked by invaders from both Europe and Asia. In the 1200s, the Mongol Empire invaded and conquered much of the region. For nearly 250 years, Russian lands remained under Mongol control in a period known as the Mongol Yoke. But over time, one city slowly became stronger than the others, Moscow. The rulers of Moscow united nearby territories, built military strength, and eventually pushed the Mongols away. This marked the beginning of a centralized Russian state. One important ruler during this era was Ivan the Terrible, who expanded Russian territory and strengthened the monarchy. Under his rule, Russia began transforming into a large empire. But the real modernization of Russia would begin under another ruler, Peter. Peter and modernization. During the late 1600s, Western Europe was rapidly advancing in science, technology, trade, and military power. Russia, however, was still behind many European nations. When Peter became ruler, he wanted to change that. Peter traveled across Europe to study shipbuilding, engineering, military tactics, and industry. He wanted Russia to become modern and competitive with European powers. After returning home, Peter introduced major reforms. He built a strong navy, modernized the army, improved trade, and encouraged industrial development. Revolution and the birth of the Soviet Union. By the early 1900s, Russia was enormous but unstable. Most citizens were poor farmers living under a monarchy with strict control. Then World War I pushed the country into crisis. Millions of Russian soldiers died in the war. Food shortages, economic collapse, and public anger spread throughout the country. In 1917, revolution erupted. The Russian monarchy collapsed, and a communist group called the Bolsheviks seized power under Vladimir Lenin. Soon, Russia transformed into the Soviet Union, the world's first major communist state. This moment would completely change global politics for the next century. Stalin and industrial power. After Lenin's death, Joseph Stalin took control of the Soviet Union. Stalin believed the country needed to industrialize rapidly in order to survive against stronger nations. Huge factories, railways, steel industries, and power plants were built across the country. The Soviet Union transformed from a mostly agricultural society into an industrial giant. However, this transformation came at a terrible cost. Millions suffered under forced labor, famine, political purges, and harsh government policies. Despite these hardships, the Soviet Union became one of the world's largest industrial powers, a development that would become critical during World War II. World War II and the rise of a superpower. In 1941, Nazi Germany under Adolf Hitler invaded the Soviet Union in the largest invasion ever launched. German forces rapidly advanced across Soviet territory, destroying cities and killing millions. But once again, Russia's vast size and brutal winter became powerful defensive advantages. The Soviet Union moved factories deep into the east where production could continue safely. Massive numbers of tanks, weapons, and supplies were produced. Then came the Battle of Stalingrad, one of the deadliest battles in human history. After months of brutal fighting, Soviet forces defeated the German army. This became the turning point of World War II. By 1945, Soviet troops captured Berlin itself. Although the Soviet Union suffered more than 20 million deaths, it emerged from the war as one of the two most powerful nations on Earth. The other was the United States. The Cold War. After World War II, the world entered the Cold War, a global rivalry between the Soviet Union and the United States. Both countries competed for military, political, technological, and economic dominance. The Soviet Union built a massive nuclear arsenal capable of destroying entire nations. At the same time, it expanded influence across Eastern Europe and supported communist movements around the world. The rivalry also extended into space. In 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik, the first artificial satellite in history. Soon after, Soviet cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin became the first human being in space. These achievements proved that the Soviet Union had become a true global superpower. The collapse of the Soviet Union. Despite its military power, the Soviet Union faced growing internal problems. The economy struggled to compete with Western nations. Government control limited innovation and productivity. Military spending became extremely expensive. The long war in Afghanistan also weakened the Soviet system. By the 1980s, Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev introduced reforms intended to save the country. Instead, the reforms accelerated political instability. In 1991, the Soviet Union officially collapsed. 15 independent countries emerged from its former territory. Russia lost enormous influence, economic power, and global status almost overnight. Many people believed Russia would never recover. Modern Russia. In the 2000s, Russia began rebuilding under Vladimir Putin. The country benefited from massive oil and gas resources, helping stabilize the economy and strengthen the military. Russia once again became an influential force in global politics. Today, Russia possesses one of the world's largest nuclear arsenals, enormous natural resources, advanced military technology, and permanent membership on the United Nations Security Council. Even after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia remains one of the most powerful countries on Earth. Russia's rise to superpower status was built over centuries of war, expansion, sacrifice, and survival. It defeated Napoleon. It survived revolution. It helped destroy Nazi Germany. It competed with the United States during the Cold War. And it became one of the most influential nations in modern history. But Russia's story is still continuing. Its future may shape the future of the world itself.